Welcome to the LivBtr podcast. I'm Erica Spiegelman, addiction and wellness specialist and author, and along with me, I have my co-host, Jay Ciano, a New York-based serial entrepreneur, business scaling expert, and wellness aficionado. We are here to inspire, encourage growth, and most importantly, to live better. Welcome to the LivBtr podcast. Today we have on a clairtangent intuitive healer, the fantastic Eboni Banks, and she's here. She's to teach us about all of her inner spiritual resources and how she helps people heal. Welcome to the show, Eboni.
Thank you so much for having me. And nice to meet you, Jay, because as Erica mentioned, she and I have met before.
Yes, great to meet you. And now Erica really has my interest piqued based on that intro. So I can't wait to hear more.
Nice.
Yeah. Do you want to tell everybody a little bit about, I know you do many things, but let's just say the experience that I was lucky to have with you. What was that about and how did that work? And tell everyone what a clairtangent intuitive healer is.
Yes. So I just like the word intuitive as opposed to like psychic, because I think psychic is really outdated and I just don't resonate with that word. And I also, believe everyone is intuitive and they're kind of different levels to intuition. And so clairtangent is kind of the specific way that I share readings with clients. Like that's my most dominant intuitive expression. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So the way that you receive information, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I receive information in a number of ways, but when it comes to like how I work with clients, it's definitely the clairtangent sessions are the most dominant. And just for reference, clair, Clair, just means clear, and tangent means touch. And most people are familiar with clairvoyant. That's a very popular clairsense. And there's 7 clairsenses, but people put like they pack everything under the clairvoyant umbrella, but they're all very specific to different types of ways of receiving information. And so with me, when I'm touching someone and I'm open and in that really receptive position, I can get information about them, and one interesting thing about people who are clairtangent is that we also experience clairvoyance and clairsentience at the same time. Like all those things are happening in a session with me. Whereas someone who is, clairvoyant or claircognizant or one of the other clairs, they're really just experiencing one thing at a time. But with touch, it kind of like triggers the other things, so other multiple things are happening.
I just wanted to say, so with Ebony, we did a phone session and I was laying on the ground and she had a teddy bear that she was using to signify my own body, right? Or to help with that process. And which is really interesting. And I know I've done a lot of readings with people like over Zoom, different kinds of intuitive healers. And so just to let everybody know, that's what mostly you do a lot of, and I think in person as well, right? You do touch healing, yeah. So through touch, and I just wanted to ask you, how did this start? Like how old were you when you started to receive information or realize that you could, intuitively tap into somebody's composition, spirit, ailments, what was going on with them? When did that happen?
So I've been aware that I was receiving information or that I knew things. As a child, I was aware that I knew things people didn't tell me. And I didn't know how I knew, I'd never heard the word intuitive, had no idea. I just really didn't understand myself. And it stressed me out, really, like I wished it away. I didn't want it to happen, And then it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I kind of started to meet like-minded people and started to understand myself a little more. And then in 2012, this is a long story, but I accidentally learned that I was clairtangent. Well, quote unquote, accidentally, right? It was just time. Learned that I was clairtangent because I was, I had an appointment with a Reiki master for either clearing my chakras or we were doing something with my chakras. And so, the day of the appointment, that's what I thought I was going to have done. She was prepared to attune me to Reiki. And I had zero interest in Reiki. I didn't, I wasn't interested in being a quote unquote like Reiki healer. but I just went with what she was prepared to do that day. So, we're in the park. We walked to a park, and this is where the Reiki attunement took place. And she's praying over me and doing all these things. And it's a public park. And I'm in Brooklyn, New York City. And this tall Jewish man with a yarmulke walks over and asks, what are you doing? And he sees that the papers say Reiki. And then he asks if I would like to practice on him. And so the woman is like, of course, the universe always sends you exactly what you want, right? So he lays down in the grass, he takes off his shoes, and I start doing essentially what she just taught me to do. But when I started touching him, I was getting information about him. And so I said to her, like, can I talk? Because Reiki is a silent practice.
Yeah.
So I asked her if it was okay for me to talk because I'm getting all this information about his wife and his daughter. And so she told me to talk. And I just, by the time I was finished, there was this whole scenario that I helped him, deal with, because it was just really traumatic experience that he was having. So until that very moment, I had zero idea that I could do that.
Wow.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was just time, because like I said, as a kid, it's something that I was aware of, but as a child, I think it was more claircognizant, which is when you just automatically know something, and clairsentient, which is when you feel, which so many of us are clairsentient,
But the information do you ever talk to spirit, or do you have any medium? Yeah, that too.
When I'm in the sessions with a client, I don't really know where the information is coming from. There isn't like something outside of me that I acknowledge that is giving it to me. You know what I mean? Like, I know it's not me, right? I know I'm the vessel, but I don't know I don't have a name or an identification for where it's coming from. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it just comes.
When you described clairtangent and then you mentioned how you and Erica had worked together previously, I was assuming that you were in the same room and you were touching her. Obviously, that was not the case. So
Right.
when you talk about using something else like a teddy bear or something, can you talk about that? Because I listening to the conversation, I'm sure a lot of people have the same question. So how are you able to do what you would be able to do in person by touching her through Zoom or technology by touching a teddy bear?
Yeah, so I don't like, computers and Zoom when I'm doing those things. I think those energies are just distractions, so I have to do it over the phone because I have to talk to the person.
Yeah.
So it's usually a phone call for my remote sessions. And the teddy bear, as Erica mentioned, I use this teddy bear that I bought just for this purpose with all my remote clients. And, I'm touching the same places on the teddy bear that I would touch the person if they were in front of me. And I get the same information, the same. It's literally as if the person was in front of me.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it was very spot on. We went through all the chakras, right? So if you want to tell everybody a little bit about the chakras and just maybe like all the different energy, the where we store all of our energy and how they all respond in terms of the way that we live our lives. But it was really interesting. So she went through the chakras and it was really accurate. I mean, everything was, just saying from my experience, it was certain things that I think I had, because I think we, mentally we are in denial, we push things aside, we have distractions, everyday life comes. And so you don't really acknowledge or give the attention that sometimes we need, And so interestingly enough, she brought that kind of forth and I was able to then, acknowledge, oh, wow, that is true. I hadn't really been able to, process that myself. So to be able to have someone else bring that up, and then I was able to process it after our call and, either take action on it or think about it. And, I thought that was very, very useful. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that because, I'm still in awe every single time it happens. And it's been happening for over 10 years now. And I'm still like, how is this happening? Like, it blows me away every single time,
Yeah.
I wish, science was a little bit more interested in spirituality to like understand how are these things happening. I have my own ideas because I understand everything is energy, frequency, and vibration, right? And so somehow I think people like me are able to tap in more to like the available energy than other people, and it's a choice, because I choose to do it. But I think we all have the same capacity. It's just like a muscle that you kind of have to exercise, and then you can expand that capacity, because I think it's a very natural human expression. And it's unfortunate that more of us don't have these kinds of experiences. Um, but yeah, the sessions are, I definitely focus on the seven main chakras. And I always tell clients too, my sessions are, you go to like, get Reiki, for example, and it's this feel good thing. Like my sessions can be really intense because the body is highly intelligent. It holds every memory from utero. So I could pick up absolutely anything. And typically it's something that the person like is holding in their body's energy field that is kind of like they're ready to deal with. It's like that's the thing that I'll pick up on. And so some people will come to me with a very specific idea of what they're wanting to have happen, but I can only do whatever I pick up on in your body. I'm not like a fortune teller or something like that. It's like I just tell you what your body is telling me, and if your body is telling this to me, it's because it's highly resonant for you right now. you know
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Are you
So,
ever delivering negative things that you are concerned about delivering?
so I don't believe in good and bad. So I don't really, I think I understand. I know, of course, I understand what you mean when you say negative, but I don't believe in good and bad. So I'm really mindful of how I share a message, right? Because if you a tarot card reader or someone else and like, oh, you must hear this before to stop this thing from happening. Like that's just sensational and ridiculous. It's not. I don't approach anything that way ever. I there are times when really heavy things I pick up in people, and I just address them as lovingly as I can. I don't really think about things as being good or bad, and so I know that because I have to like filter how I talk about it.
Sure.
I can be more matter of fact about something that somebody thinks is horrific, right? But I've learned not to judge things. So,
Yeah.
I might just like say the thing. So I have to be sensitive in that way. But I also, am mindful of making sure it's a loving message, because at the end of the day, I think everything is always in divine order,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't ever think of it in that way.
Well, it's beautifully said, and I understand how you would have that perspective, and obviously at the same time want to make sure that something potentially heavy, that when it lands on somebody, is obviously going to have a major impact on the next phases of their life, right?
Yeah,
Which
absolutely.
is powerful, because you know I think it's also intimidating. Like when I hear this, I'm like, man, do I want to know? Do I not want to know? Like it's one of
but
those.
it's all like she said, it's all in loving things. The way I think
Oh,
what makes it a little bit more like, so for instance, like if she's telling me something that I kind of already know, but I don't really want to confront it yet. That's so it's our own interpretation of what the information she gives us. It's kind of like the interpretation. Am I ready to confront that? Like if I was upset about it, let's just say it's because I personally don't like confrontation, or I'm not good at communication, or I am scared to say something to somebody because of their nature. Like there's so much underneath it that it's not necessarily the information, it's just how we receive it. And then, so for me, like she said something to me about being ready to communicate something to my husband. Let's just, I'm giving an example. I don't There was a couple different things, but let's so for me it's like, well, do I really want to do that yet? Not really, but
Right.
yet I know it to be true. So it's kind of it lands on us to then,
sure.
do we take action? Are
Yeah.
we ready to, and like she said,
Erica, do you feel like you have intuition?
yeah, I definitely do, especially in the work I do in recovery. I feel like I can definitely sense what someone needs in terms of like to heal in that part. I'm an addiction counselor. I'm a licensed addiction counselor. So, for
Oh,
me, like my intuition, I pick up on certain things like that, which I think you probably do too in your day to day. But I think it's only because we're with the certain energy we're around, and what we like anything you do habitually, right? You're gonna start feeling, I think, a little bit more naturally,
Yeah, I
right?
think people that are more open to it, receive it more. Maybe not to the extent of Ebony. Like we should
Yeah.
all be so blessed to have that sort of, like real amazing talent and gift.
But the thing is, you are,
Yeah,
and so much of the barrier I think that people have is like mental,
yeah,
like we have very limited view of just who we are, right? Just the person that we are. And so when you think about who you are and your non-physical presence and like all the things that that connects to, like some of us, we can talk about it all day long. We can like to hear about it, but it's a whole nother thing to believe it
yeah,
and
Mhm.
to live it, and I think that is where so many people get tripped up, because if you just allow your brain to think about who you are a little differently and expand your view of yourself, like that alone shifts your energy and allows you to be more receptive, because our brain can be such a block for things.
So, Ebony, did you
I
have
love that.
parents or did you have an environment that encouraged this kind of open-mindedness around this? Because I feel like certain people that may not ever see themselves as an intuitive has so
Yeah.
many narratives going on in their, let's say, family or culture or religion or
Yes.
sex that they just can't, it's like, I don't believe in this stuff. Like, that's it, period, versus like ever, yeah, cracking open a little bit. I think that's what holds, I think, a lot of people back when I talk about things like this.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a Christian family, right? So,
Okay.
the idea of what God is was very much around Jesus and, being baptized and all these things. Like a very traditional Black American Baptist church is where I spent a lot of time.
Mhm.
But I never understood like how they identify God as a he. Like that always confused me, because I never thought of God as a person, right? And this is a child's mind thinking this. And so I just heard the word he and I was like, oh, people think it's a person? Like it's not a person. And then and my family was pretty rigid around Christianity. But what I learned in my 20s, which really changed things for me, was that my maternal great grandmother read palms for a living in
Wow.
the Jim Crow South. She lived in Tampa in the 1940s. And
Wow.
so my family has this other way, they understand that life can, there's another way of living and experiencing life that no one said to me until I was in my 20s. And it was such a relief, because she had transitioned before I was born, so I never knew her. And my mom can remember lines of people, out the front of her door and like around the corner, people sitting in their cars waiting for her, people piled up in her living room. And this is a Black American woman in the Jim Crow South. And
Wow.
all these clients are white, of course, right? And that's not a life anyone ever thinks of when they think about Black life in the 1940s in this country.
Yeah.
And she did so well that she owned her home. She had a driver and a car. Like,
Wow.
this is just not a life that you think of. So when I have learned all these things about her, it just really gave me so much relief, because I've always known there was so much more. I was never comfortable talking to my family about the things I was experiencing.
Mhm.
And as a child, I even thought I was bad for it. I thought, oh, I know things adults don't know, or things adults didn't tell me, so I have to be bad you know?
Mhm.
And then I
Mhm.
would go to the other extreme, and then I would think, oh, I'm really smart. That's how I know
Mhm.
these things. Like I was just trying to understand. This is like my 7-year-old self. So no, my family really, I think, had I had more of a family that was open to more and like talking more about different ways of experiencing life and
Mhm.
experiencing, God or source energy or the universe, whatever name you want to give that, supreme intelligence,
Mhm.
I think I would have accepted this part of myself a lot sooner, because it's taken years for me to like not think I'm weird and to be okay with it.
Yeah.
But you just used the word transitioned. So
Mhm.
when you say transition, what do you mean by that? And what do you believe happens through transition?
So I definitely believe in past lives, and I think we all essentially in our current, life are at different levels of spiritual maturity based on like what our previous lives have been. And so I think, with my grandmother, she left her physical body, as is natural, and it's not a horrific, scary thing, and just moves on to another realm of existence. The soul just moves on to another realm of existence.
Mhm.
Who know what that existence is? Who knows? But it's not earthly.
I've read Seed of the Soul, a bunch of different, books that I think through the years have like, I prefer that belief system as well. And I kind of almost feel that to be true intuitively, I guess. But I never necessarily got that information from somewhere, you know, so it was more reading and then kind of identifying. But did you, like, I'm curious how people that write these books that do this kind of work, where did that information come from for you? Did that just resonate from someone else, or did you?
I think as a child, when I learned about like, because I had to go to Sunday school was part of my life, like church was a whole thing. So when I was learning
Me
about like
too. Me
Easter,
too.
was it a whole thing for you
Yeah.
too?
Yeah.
So I learned about Easter and like the resurrection of Jesus Christ and all these things. And I was always really fascinated with that, you know? To me, the significant, as a child, the significance of like, Jesus being born again, which is how Christians talk about it. To me, that was like an indication that we do, or we are capable of coming back in some way, shape, or form, right? That when we leave the body, it doesn't have to be like finite. You know, it's not the show's not over. There's more. Just
Yeah.
what the more is, who knows? You know. And then as an adult, I think I don't know. I mean, I get a lot of information in my sleep. You know, like my sleep life is a whole thing. I get a lot of like I receive a lot of information consciously in my sleep. I also have experiences where it's just my psyche being stressed out about something, and it's like nonsense, my dreams. But
Mhm.
I have experiences too, so I get a lot of information from my sleep. You
Mhm.
know, and I've had lots of readings with folks, and a couple of them have shared with me a couple of my past lives, which make so much sense. You know, one even connects to my trauma.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think it's just how I naturally think about things. And then my life has just kind of shown me that, kind of confirmed for me that what I was thinking is possible, you know?
Can you share what that was, the link with your trauma, or
Yeah.
the?
Yeah. So, and I learned that the perpetrator, I'm a sexual assault survivor, and I learned that the perpetrator, I had a relationship with that person in a previous life, right?
Mm,
And so essentially, we were playing out kind of where we left off previously.
wow.
Yeah. Which really blew my mind because, oftentimes for people who do believe in past lives, we typically think that we were these lovely people. We only think about like all the healthy, happy experiences in our past lives. But when you think about ancient cultures and the way, some of them behave, they were sacrificing children and,
Barbaric. Yeah.
doing really barbaric things. Exactly. And so, some of those souls are present in this life right now, So we weren't always doing lovely, healthy, loving things. We were also doing very horrific things. So I just learned that about my past life with my trauma. And it just made so much sense for me.
I'm sorry to hear that. Did that help you though? Did that help, like,
Did it
heal
help?
you
That's
in
a good
some way?
question. I don't really know if it helped because at the point where I received this, I had this past life regression. I was in a healthy space with processing my trauma at that point. It made sense because there were things, specific things about my relationship with this person that I had always had a knowing about,
Mm-hmm.
even for like years, and so it just kind of connected dots for me, and it really made it make sense. But the bigger takeaway was just like the possibility, right, of how beautifully everything is connected.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everything is connected and it's all in divine order. And it's really led me to, I didn't believe in judgment since high school. I haven't believed in good and bad, right? But it gave me even a deeper appreciation for why you cannot judge anything, right? No matter how quote unquote
Mm-hmm.
horrific it appears,
Mm-hmm.
because we have such a limited view of life. We're seeing the entirety of life through this very small lens,
Yeah.
and we think we know, right? And
Yeah.
we have no idea. We
Yeah.
have no idea. So,
I think with like a lot, so we had in our neighborhood two little boys or brothers killed by a hit and run accident, and
whew,
the parents were behind them with their two other kids, and the two boys were in the front on scooters, and it was just a horrific accident for our community. And any of us that have kids, I mean, it always brings me to tears when I think about them. But I feel that, like, that's their path. And so, like, there's not for us, even as sad as it is for the family, and the fact that,
mhm.
I think on, like, the level that we can understand with the power we have, it's sad, it's tragic, it's unfortunate. These boys could have had beautiful lives, but yet there's something that gives me a little solace and peace knowing that that's their path. and
Yep.
that in their death, it's not in vain, because there's so many other things that, you know, may come from it that we'll never know, you know, positive things, let's say. And so I think like that for me in terms of death, and also seeing my clients overdose through the years due to,
Whew.
you know, the you know, the drug epidemic and all these things that go on, it gives me also solace, that kind of belief system of like, well, that's their path, and maybe in their, because of their death, someone else can be saved, or, you
Yeah.
know, you don't know the ripple effect of these things we classify as just tragic, you know, I mean, they
Yes.
are, but yeah.
Yes. I'm so happy to hear you say that because, that's definitely how I think about things. And that is hard to hear.
Yeah,
It's hard to hear because
it's
there
hard to hear for people.
there are
Yeah,
really hurtful things that are happening every single day.
yeah,
And so, but, and I wondered too for myself, I wondered if I was just trying to feel better or understand. But I
yeah.
think ultimately for me, why that makes sense for me is because I think, love is the only thing that is real,
Hmm.
right? It's the only thing that is real. And life is actually, this is a loving experience. It's just like what the choices that we make that choose for it to be less loving than it could potentially be.
Hmm.
But, that I know that is true, right? I know that is true. And so that is how it leads me to like understanding my own
Hmm.
trauma and these things in the way that I do.
I know. No, I'm glad to kind of, you know, have a conversation about that, because, you know, when I talk to families and these like tragedies happen, and I can't say that necessarily, I can't be insensitive, but again, it really helps me in terms of being in the position of helping people through this, you know? So yeah, and I believe it to be true, as painful as it is, you know? So two things are true here. It's painful, and there's maybe something else to it that we don't even understand. Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's so much beauty to be found in pain.
Yeah.
There's so much if you choose to go there.
Yeah.
Well,
Hell of a
you
day
can't
too. And you,
experience pleasure without pain, and you can't. There's a juxtaposition to everything, and you could boil it up with the really commonly used phrase that everything happens for a reason,
Yes.
and it's super interesting to hear the conversation. I'm excited for the community to hear it because I think the same way, even when it's tougher to do when you're personally and emotionally attached to the situation,
yeah.
than objectively, for
Yep.
sure. But it also keeps you going, right? Like hope is one of the most, I think, important things in high stress situations, whether it be in business or family or anything in life. And without hope, what do you have? So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
beautifully
And
said.
it's given me it's changed my understanding of dark and light too, because, my memoir that I wrote is titled Copy the Sky, right? And that came to me in a dream, the name of the book. And it's like the perfect title. I was so grateful to the energy that, whoever that came from, because, it's about balancing like light and dark. And we we've made darkness this evil thing. But really, when you think about, I'm someone who believes in like as above, so below. And I think nature tells us so much about how we should be living life. There's so much information that we get just from observing nature. And if you look at, the dark matter of the cosmos and all the unknown that exists there. So for me, I think of, what we call darkness as just the unknown. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be bad or evil or wicked, or, we don't have to demonize it. It's just the unknown. And
Mhm.
and if you believe, or if you have an understanding that life is loving, once you go into those unknown spaces, you can find relief and comfort because you will find a loving perspective.
Yeah.
Right.
Beautiful.
But
Beautiful.
because we think darkness is, we demonize it. No one wants to go there. Right. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited to talk to people more about like understanding dark and light in a different way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, a lot of times when I reflect back on my life and think about, like, my earliest tattoos were an angel and a devil on my shoulders.
Hmm.
And I've been dealing with that my whole life. And sometimes my wife will say to me, like, you have a dark side, like you have, and I'm like, listen, I think that everybody has a light and dark side, and you
Hmm.
just hope that you're gravitating to the light side. And I think especially with masculine energy, I
Mm.
think that men in particular that are not really heavily disciplined and focused on being strong as a leader for their families and so on and so forth are very
Yeah.
dangerous. And I
Yeah.
think everybody has that light and dark side. And to me, that's not, you're not offending me by saying I have a light and a dark side. I agree with you.
Right.
I have a light and a dark side, but I'm here to do good.
Yeah.
And, I think not many people have that kind of macro perspective or feeling
Yeah.
and thought about, the universe and our spirits and our souls. And, I think negativity spreads so much easier than positivity. So you have to work really, really hard to be positive and share positive messages that
Yes.
cut through the negativity and the dark.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I also believe that at our core we are all love, right? And so the things that cause us to behave and exhibit painful, behaviors, um, you know, getting to the root of those things is so important because those things are not who you are. Those things are not who anybody is, right? Those are kind of like really maladaptive, maladjusted, behaviors that have come from people's pain that
Yeah.
is unresolved, or things that they haven't reconciled. And so,
Mhm.
that I guess that if you think of dark as like people who think of dark as being bad, it's not bad. It's really pain, and it's important to get to the unknown aspects of the root of that pain.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
like conditioned though. I've seen so many people just conditioned to behave in certain ways because
Yeah,
repetitively that's all they've seen, or that's all that they've been taught, or that's all that
absolutely.
they've been pushed towards, literally pushed towards. So, like you said, it's not necessarily who they are, although that's them exhibiting these behaviors. So it's
Right.
confusing for people.
Yep.
Um, and it's confusing for the people that love those people because it's like
Totally.
it's them. What do you mean? It's them, and it's not always them. There's so many layers to all of us. It's just,
Yeah.
I wish somebody would have told me that many years ago because,
yeah,
through the loss of my mother in my early 20s, I was just angry and just
Yeah.
mad. And when somebody says, to you at a young age like that, where you're not very mature, like, what are you so angry about? Like, what do you say? It's like, wait a minute, like, I'm fucking angry because my mom's gone. Like, I miss her.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
like, why do you
Yep.
think I'm angry? Like, you think I'm just going to be able to deal with such a traumatic experience like that and go on the next day and be happy about my life? It's just not
Yep.
possible. And it takes a really, when you said it's pain, it's a million% pain. And I don't wish pain like that on anybody.
Absolutely.
It's one of those, it's joining a club you never wanted to belong to.
Yeah,
right.
for sure. I mean, I repressed my trauma for nearly 20 years. That it caused me so much pain. Like my brain didn't even let me acknowledge that this horrible thing happened to me.
Sure.
So, I mean, pain is like, it's very real. It is
Mhm.
very real. And I kind of think of my trauma, I've come to think of it a bit as an offering because without the healing journey that was triggered by that pain, I don't know for sure because it didn't happen, right? This is what is happening is what is happening. I don't know for sure if I would have, gotten to these depths with who I am and how to experience life in a way that brings me joy, you
Yeah,
know.
I
yeah,
think it's safe to say you wouldn't.
Exactly. I think so too. I think so too. I've
yeah,
had friends that think I'm being hard on myself and they're like, oh, but you don't know, maybe. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not what's happening. I can only go by what is actually happening. Right.
right, right,
Yeah.
right. We
Yeah.
all transform and use our experiences, I think, for to help others and to
Yeah.
help, through relating to people and helping those people through things too. Ebony, we could talk to you for so long, and I mean, I could. This is like one of my favorite kind of conversations ever, ever, ever. So we so appreciate you being here with us. And can you tell
Yeah.
everybody that's listening, where to find you, what your offerings are, and
Sure.
yeah. what's going on next. Yeah.
Sure. So my website is ebonibanks.me, and Ebony is EBONI, and my Instagram is Intuitive Ebony Writes. So those are the best places to find me. If you're interested in a remote session, you can book there. Or if you're in New York City, we could do face-to-face sessions. And I have 2 books that I've written that I'm hoping to birth into the world. And one
Wow.
of them is a workbook teaching people like how to access their intuition. It's for
Cool.
people who know nothing about it, right? So I don't even think I wrote the book. That I think I channeled because I'm so proud of it. It's like there's activities and all these lovely things for people to do. And then the
Wow.
other book is just a memoir about the entirety of my healing journey. So, which is
Wow. That's amazing.
really interesting and abstract. So
Amazing. Amazing. And we're looking forward to that. And let us know how to support you when these books come out because
thank you.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
this was great. Really, really
Everyone
great
needs this
meeting you.
information. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.